Hello and welcome back to the conclusion of this Ring of Red mission. We're going to start with more punching. I find it kind of interesting that punching is downplayed a fair bit in the early game. The anti-AFW is the last one you get, for reasons that are kind of... well, I've already talked about them. It's good reasoning. But the game never really tells you how close combat works. At least not in an organic gameplay kind of way, the same way it introduces how the light, medium, and four-leg AFWs work. Although I suppose when you first encounter anti-AFWs, you could learn through the School of Hard Knocks. That's always a popular one. I swear, some of the pieces of Ippei's AFW look more like a car than a tank. I went ahead a bit and tried out that triple infantry build that I mentioned last time. It did not work as well as I hoped, mostly because the only AFW I could think of that it could work really well on was Ryoko's, because for four legs the ability to attack from further away is just extremely valuable, and that requires scouts. Or recon, whatever, you know who it is. The problem is that with that build, Ryoko does not have a supply or mechanic, and thus she has trouble holding down anti-AFWs with wire or E-wire. Or mines, whatever. E-wire is best, though, because the enemy often doesn't have both cleanup and repair. But I digress. I will say that the infantry that I picked up has 3 ink shrap shells, which is actually very impressive. I found that I didn't usually need to fire ink shrap more than once in an encounter, and even then, it wasn't needed in every encounter either, just against some really obnoxious setups like 1 infantry and 1 medic. So I definitely plan to use that infantry squad. They even have rapid fire. As for the rest, I'll figure that out later. I don't really know why I decided to aim at their AFW there. I also don't know why I had to go through that setup animation again. That was very annoying. I guess there's really not much to say for this battle. You've seen already how John works at this point in the game. And also at this point of the game, we have kind of a better reason for the enemy to have the advantage in special shells. Because each of my units has a lot of maximum attacks per map. And we've already seen it demonstrated that they can have similar or even better functions than the enemy's shells. For example, John's creeping fire is like Ink Shrap, except it also hits the back row. Oh, now that's no fun. That is kind of fun, though. And speaking of maximum attacks, I've been thinking about why I have quite this much trouble with Ryoko, and I think the biggest reason is that she doesn't really have a maximum attack that defines her gameplay the way that some of the others do. Oof. Like, as you just saw, John has Creeping Barrage. Weisegger has Accurate Fire. With Ippei and Emilio, Quick Move is a core skill that changes the way they fight. Kensato, of course, has Spray Fire and Suppress Fire. Jun has both Aim Weapon and Check Fire, making him a great disabler depending on what you need. And Ryoko mostly has Rapid Punch. Which, you consume a skill to act as an anti-AFW for one battle. I mean, it's not bad in that you can act as an anti-AFW which also has a good gun. But it also sort of pigeonholes her into the armor killing role, which I just... Well, actually, Weisegger also has that problem, but he has sort of better stats to back that sort of thing up. And I feel like the anti-armor role is just not as good overall as the squad killer role. The reason is that if an enemy has both of its squads removed... Oh, well, that's nice. Anyway, if an AFW has both of its squads removed, there's basically no recovering from it. And if an AFW with no squads attacks an AFW which has a couple of anti-infantry squads, that is not nearly as bad as if an anti-armor setup AFW is attacked by enemies who have full squads. Now, I will say that anti-armor builds are very nice for, well, bosses, but those are pretty rare, at least at this point in the game. Also, you usually don't need more than one anti-armor dedicated AFW to deal with that sort of thing. Oh, they are throwing themselves into my plan again. And the other reason, well, one of the other reasons that I feel like Ryoko being an anti-armor build has problems is that, as observed, enemies love to attack medium AFWs, which tends to put her in the position of dealing with enemies with fresh squads. I think that Ippei and Emilio can kind of get away with anti-armor builds more easily than the others, because they're built for short battles. Or at least they're good at causing short battles. So if they're attacked with enemies that have 2 fresh squads, guess what? That's no problem, because they can just walk up and punch. Or run up and punch, depending on whether they use a maximum attack. So that kind of naturally puts them in the role, which even further gives Ryoko the problems. I don't know, maybe there's something about using her machine that I don't know about yet. Okay, so this is going to be fun. I've set 2 sets of chain mines, so we'll see what happens when they come in for close combat. Oh, ouch. And here's another one. Considering the damage of that last one, this is sure to finish off at least one of their squads. What? Why weren't the medics hit? They're still alive. What happened? After looking at this footage, my only guess is that chain mines can't finish off squads. It's kind of weird though, because I thought that happened in one of the previous maps. Oh well. I think it's a little early to send in Weizsäcker against these guys, but on the other hand, they do have broken legs, so capitalizing on it immediately might not be the worst thing. My idea here is to go ahead and take some anti-squad shots once they move forward. I'll almost certainly will not remove their recon, however, I might drive it back. Also, it would have been a pretty good idea to bring the recon on the ground so that they would finish off those enemy medics. Also, I discovered that ink shrap does not seem to be usable at short range. I think shrapnel might have the same problem, in which case enemies with ink shrap, well, I wouldn't say they're easy to deal with, but At least there would be a solution available. That is a pretty nice anti-infantry hit, gotta say. So I haven't really discussed Ryoko's problems as anti-infantry, but I'll just say she can only do it well at medium range, and she doesn't have any special skills associated with it. That having been said, I'm still going to go with that as a build for her next map, just because I'm going to need all of the squad clearing power I can get. Well, I guess if they both move forward at once, I can hit them with a bombard. Not that it's really necessary. Actually, yeah, it's definitely not necessary. I can just use the 2 snipes and everything will be okay. Talk about your bad situations, though. Well, generally, if your legs are broken on an anti-AFW, you're toast anyway, but especially at long range and without squads. That's about as crippled as I'm ever going to see an AFW in this game, I'd say. Well, I mean, I'm not going to hit 10, 80% shots in a row. That would be silly. I didn't fire 10, 80% shots, but that's... you know what I was getting at. Shut up! Woohoo! We defended the base. I rarely... Oh yeah, there it goes. they're gonna say otherwise, but I'd like to say it just, well, completely blew up from no cause at all. So what's going to happen here annoys me greatly, but not because the base was destroyed anyway. I mean, that's just the way these games go sometimes. It's just the writing. That it could have been done better. We'll see. Hooray! We completed the mission. I have a similar feeling in a lot of Earth Defense Force missions. Oh, he's learning how to aim his punches better. Not that I'm gonna punch with him very often, but any little bit helps. And that 50 experience bonus at the end is so valuable because it doesn't get scaled according to level. Well, now that the tally of surveyed units is almost over, let's hear the story's explanation of how this base blew up. I mean, of course it was sabotage. There's no talk of artillery or anything. We got a green medic unit, which I'm not going to use. Explanations will happen later. Alright, so let's talk about the situation. Clearly, the base was under attack, and there was a saboteur, or perhaps more than one saboteur in there. So I can't imagine that the people in there were not alert. So, setting bombs in places like munitions and other delicate places, this I can believe. There's all sorts of places to hide that sort of thing. The part that I kind of went, huh, at is how they somehow managed to block off all of the entrances and exits beforehand. Like, how do you not notice that sort of thing if you're in the base? If I was writing it, what I would do is say, during the map, there's a report from the Karma base saying that infantry has started attacking. Don't worry, we can handle it. But if the AFWs get here, we're toast. And then, oh no, sabotage from within. And everyone is forced out from the fire, but they're surrounded and get captured or killed by the soldiers that had already begun the attack. That would achieve the same goal and strikes me as much more believable. That being said, my knowledge of this sort of thing is horrendously imperfect. It's possible that there's some sort of, I don't know, example in history for exactly that kind of sabotage. Maybe it's based off a real-life thing. I don't know. If you do know, please tell me, because I'd be very interested in hearing about it. Even this guy is annoyed by this story contrivance. I mean, that explanation thing does sound like some guy high up in corporate asking you about a reduction in the production of widgets or something. I was actually also kind of surprised by how strongly Weizsäcker asked to keep pursuing Type 3. I mean, at this point, it's really hard to argue that it even matters. I mean, the enemy, or I shouldn't say the enemy, I should just say North Japan has had plenty of time to examine how Type 3 works. Even if they didn't have the technology to produce that sort of thing before, they definitely know how to do it now. But let's just move on to the next video. See you then.